This episode contains adult language and adult humor. Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults? If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Augie Haas. Augie is a New York-based trumpet player, composer, and educator who has toured and recorded with Harry Connick Jr. and has been a member of the Maria Schneider, Vanguard Jazz, and Radio City Orchestras, as well as the Gil Evans Project and Birdland Big Band. Augie is also the author of the play-along method book, Build Your Range. While Augie certainly knows how to get things cooking on stage, he is also known for his ability to get things cooking in the kitchen. So pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. All right, welcome to this episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, and I am here with Dr. Augie Haas. It's good to see you, man. It's been a number of years. I think the last time I saw you was at ITG in Columbus.
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah. The site of the infamous trumpet videos with you and Jaeger and Kwalik.
Yeah. So. We just went in those back rooms and just started messing around.
Yeah. So it's good to see you, man. How are you making out during all of this wonderful craziness that's going on?
It's cool, here in New York, obviously we got hit really hard in the beginning. Seem to be flattening out, so that's cool. But, just doing what I can to be creative. And, I took some time off the horn, which felt really good. And then slowly getting back into it, which is really nice too, because with the time off, you don't have to rush or feel pressured. Like you have to, get ready back in shape to perform. So you can really, take your time again, which that part of it is nice. Obviously we miss the gigs, we miss playing with our friends, we miss seeing people, but, try to make the positives out of the negatives. So I've enjoyed just like practicing what I want to practice, taking time, hanging with my wife. We have no choice because we only have four walls in our tiny New York apartment. But everything's been cool.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I know that I've heard kind of from different people, both sides of the thing. A lot of people are just super frustrated because they're not able to get out and gig, but a lot of people seem to be really enjoying the fact that they're able to, in some ways, take a fresh approach to the horn, because when you don't have the demands of whatever work you're typically doing, that you can start to explore things a little bit differently. I mean, has that been the case for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely took like a solid 10 to 14 days off where I just didn't even think about it. And I was just trying to be creative in other ways, or just hanging, and actually like letting your body rest, which, I know I've seen so many people post like, I'm going to lose 100 pounds and I'm going to do this. I'm like, I'm going to sit on the couch for 2 weeks and I'm going to be okay with it,
Yeah.
Because now I feel charged and, ready to do more things. And definitely taking a new approach to the horn and, just kind of futzing around with some different things. Maybe I've always wanted to try what like this rim might feel like, on the geeky side. And I wonder what this would happen if I warmed up like this every day, because like you said, you don't have those demands or those pressures of, I gotta sound good tonight or all that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because, especially for trumpet players, you hear a lot of people talk about or making this analogy of playing trumpet is kind of like a sport. You have to be an athlete, especially like being a lead player.
Yeah.
But the big difference between sports and being a professional is that in sports you have a season. And that's it, whether it's 3 months or 6 months or whatever, and then after that you have downtime. But when you're a working musician, those rest periods are few and far between. So there's no ability to do what they call periodization. You can't up your levels and slack off a little bit. You have no off season. So do you feel like this time off is not only giving you the physical break, but the mental break that you need to come back fresh?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, and you just, you can let your brain go other places, which, all musicians are creative. And if you look at, musicians and their interests outside of music, I think you see a lot of similarities. I know a ton of musicians that like to cook. I love to cook. And, you can let your brain relax and kind of open up other creative outlets, which actually in turn will help you when you get back to playing trumpet. Like, oh, wow, I can do this now, or I can approach it this way. But, it really is refreshing to give your brain a rest and just not think about it for a second.
Yeah.
I totally am with you on the sports analogy too.
Yeah. I know you're a cheesehead.
proudly a cheesehead.
Proudly a cheesehead. So yeah, that's cool. And the cooking, I remember seeing all those wonderful posts of stuff that you were cooking up, and I was like, I need to go up and see Augie just so
hey, man,
get a
you're
good meal.
welcome anytime. I always say anyone's always welcome. We'll set a place for you at the table.
Well, I think maybe that's an idea for a show for you. It's like trumpets and Tupperware or something like that. So you show somebody how to play a double C and how to cook a souffle. So
exactly.
That sounds great. I know that you've got a really kind of interesting arc in your career, and I got first turned on to you when your dissertation started floating around, and the art of playing trumpet in the upper register, so you kind of hit the scene as this, tremendous lead player, which you certainly are. The guy with the knowledge, the nuts and bolts of how to approach the horn in the upper register. But your current work, in terms of like your 2 CDs that you've done, have been mostly about your jazz playing and your singing.
Yeah.
Which it's like, wow. The first time when I heard your first. Not the Dream a Little Dream, the one right before that, which
Have We Met?
Yeah, Have We Met? And I put it on, and I'm like going, okay, here it comes. I'm waiting for the double C blast to be in the face, and it's like, whoa, this is different. and it was really chill. I was on a drive with my wife. We're heading up to Canada, and we put it on, and she loves like Dean Martin and Sinatra and stuff like that, and she's like, oh, who's this? I'm like, oh, my friend Augie. And she's like, wow, he's really good. And I didn't know, you knew any singers. I'm like, no, he's a trumpet player.
Exactly.
So it was really great. I mean, what were you like when you first started in your professional career? Were you hoping to approach it more as a soloist, like a jazz player, or were you mostly a lead player? And then, how did it all work out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was always really known as a lead player, and then when I got to Miami, I started studying trumpet with Alex Norris. And the thing about like lead playing, or I feel like once you have a basic understanding of how the trumpet works, it's not like something you work on at a certain point, especially when you're in college. You're rehearsing in a big band like 4 or 5 days a week for 2 hours a day. It's not like that's something like you need to go home and do then, right? And you're thinking about balance and things like that. And I just, that part of my playing seriously lacked, but it was always something that I wanted to do, So when I got to Miami, the lead playing, that's, those were the gigs I was doing, and that's what I was doing at school. So when I'd practice, I would just, practice playing jazz and softly, because if you're playing loud all day in a big band, you want to balance that with something else, whether it's soft etudes and for me, it was just learning tunes and playing softly. And, and I think the best way to train your ears is by singing, because if you can't sing, in my opinion, you can't play it, and especially as a lead player too, like you have to be able to hear those notes, because once you push a certain button, it doesn't really matter anymore. Right. So I was working on both. And one day someone said to me like, man, I really like your singing. You should sing more. So, I got a trio together in New York, and I started singing, and then someone was like, man, you should really do a record. And, I guess the arc was I was just kind of just floating, and, I always did the lead thing because that's what seems to be high in demand. But, in my spare time. I was just having fun, not, bashing my face and just playing tunes and singing a little bit and playing a little bit here. And it seemed to hurt a lot less. So I just kind of took to it.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. I mean, it's definitely got a nice vibe. It swings, and I was just, I hate to say that I'm surprised at it because, that makes it go like, wow, they really didn't think much of me anyway. But
a lot of people ask me, who's singing on that album? And I was like, all right. I said, it's me. They're like, come on, who's really singing? So, most people had that reaction, which I'm totally good with.
Yeah. So it's all good. You were in New York. You were playing with Harry Connick for a bit. Yeah. That had to be one hell of a book to play.
Yeah, it was, especially because there was at one point, we did a tour and I was the only trumpet player on the road. It was just four horns, trumpet, trombone, and two saxes. And he still wanted all that crazy stuff that Roger kind of had done, and but also you had to cover all the section parts, and then also you had to play some solos at some point. So yeah, I would say that was some of the more challenging work, and eventually added another trumpet player, which took a little pressure off. But yeah, without that section and that big band, it was definitely challenging. Playing in the upper register without that kind of support you're used to.
Yeah. I mean that band. I mean, like in the earlier days, Roger, Dan Miller, Leroy. That was a kicking section, and to try and take that and condense it down into one player.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very talented guy, so he did it, but it didn't take any less pressure off any of the guys in the sections, because if it's only four, you're so much more exposed, whether you're playing saxophone, trombone, trumpet, everything, you have a microscope on you.
Yeah. Did you start doing your trio gigs while you were still with Harry, or was that something
I did?
Started? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be a nice little, juxtaposition,
Yeah, you'd be on the road for a couple of months, and then you'd get back and you'd want to do something else for a little while, and like I said before, it's just all about balance. I remember being on the road, the only things I would play during the day to warm up were like Clark really softly, Clark 1, Clark 6, just softly, because you'd be playing loud all night,
Yeah. So that I can't imagine the pressure that you had to feel on it, because I know Roger pretty well, and I'd followed the band for years, and I just know that some of the stuff that Harry had in that book for the lead trumpet player is just stupid. So,
yeah. I mean, I had the pleasure of studying with Roger my last year at Roosevelt University, and Roger and I are buds, and it was cool. I didn't try and copy exactly what he did, which I think takes a little bit of the pressure off. It's you throw him in there, here and there, but my trumpet teacher Rob Parton told me, heroes die young, so don't try and do everything he did, because you had people to spell him here, or maybe Dan Miller takes 8 bars there, but when you don't have that luxury, you gotta you pay tribute, but don't try and kill yourself.
Yeah, that's very true. But your job probably would have been a little bit easier, and this is just me giving you some critique. Your job would have been a lot easier if you had been playing that Haas 2 Scream. That's exactly what you needed for that gig. So
I know. I came up with the idea a little too late.
Yeah, that's still one of my favorite videos of all time. So.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I didn't think that would get as much traction as it did, but I remember being at Landers' shop once. He had a practice room in the back, and sometimes if I was running around, I wanted to get a quick half hour or so, and I'd run over there before my show or whatever. And he came back and goes, "You're never going to believe this. These kids are here asking about the horn," because I kept it at his shop.
Okay.
And he goes, "Come on, we should really, we should really milk this." I said, "Oh, okay." So I go out, and And I said, okay, let's see how they go. Is it for real? I said, absolutely. So the kid tries and play it. You could maybe he played like a high C or high D. He's like, I don't know. I thought you said. I said, you're the first person that this hasn't worked for, and he did. It was, eventually let him in on the secret. But he said people would come in and ask a call about the horn. Is the horn for sale? Is this for? I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. If you don't know what we're talking about, you can go to Augie's website and just go on the media page, and there's a link there, or just go on YouTube and search the Haas to Scream, and you will certainly scream with laughter when you see that one. What gave you the idea for that? That's just so out there.
So when I was playing with Maria Schneider's band, I had the absolute pleasure of standing next to Lori Frank a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And, obviously she was not only like an amazing trumpet player, but obviously was known for her pedagogy and teaching, and has taught everybody. So I was trying to be a sponge to her, and, she had a great sense of humor. And we would always joke that, the third valve was just such a waste, and that you didn't really need it. It was just for show. And I said to her one time, I said, we should do this video. I said, I have a horn that someone gave me, and it was from an old school. It was totally beat up, not even worth saving. I said, let's just chop the third valve off and do this video. And unfortunately, she got sick, and we never got to it, but I was determined to get that done for her. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, but I got the idea from her. She always joked like, third valve, just what is that? Just a waste.
Yeah, that's funny though. So I want to go back to your dissertation. So what was it, for those of you who don't know about this, just go to Augie's site. He'll, his website's got all this stuff on there, but and you can actually download a copy of it, and it's like 130 some pages of material, and you kind of delve into the various concepts that people use, like kind of the basic ones for developing the upper register in their playing. And I found it to be a fascinating read, but of course I'm kind of a geek that way anyway. But
I think we all are.
Yeah,
people say they're not. All trumpet players, oh no, that's not me. I'm not. We are.
Yeah. But it's the approach that you took of trying to get to the underlying components and identifying the similarities that exist, but also some of the derivations from that, and what works, why it works, when it works, who it works for. So can you kind of take us through the steps that led you to that, doing that dissertation, and what you personally got out of it?
Sure. So it wasn't my original topic, which is really funny. My original topic, I wanted to write a critical analysis of a jazz performance degree in its current state, because I went straight through school, and I'll be honest, like by the time I got to my doctorate, I was like getting a little burnt out on school, and just like, I had some cool gigs, and I thought I was cool, even though, I wasn't. But so I was looking at school and all the school I did, and how I thought, like at an undergraduate performance degree, how the curriculum at the time was still based on the 1950s curriculum, like that came out of North Texas. And I said, oh man, we should really make some improvements upon this. And I kind of put the two questions is, if for a performance degree, should you, number one, have to take academic classes and things like that? Or number two, would it behoove you to not go to school at all, just pick the city you want to live in and study with whoever teaches wherever you want to teach? Because, to go to University of Miami, if you don't get any funding or scholarships, it's like $60,000 a year.
Hi.
So I was thinking, from a financial standpoint too, like big band gigs, and some of them only pay like $10 in New York. Yeah, so it's like, that's a lot of $10 big band gigs to pay back, if you're taking on student loans. Are we really best serving the students? Mm-hmm. Well, that idea got rejected pretty fast, in my original defense, which is fine. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to write about something I kind of love, and it's not going to like, I'm not going to have to kill myself, and I can talk to people I want to talk to. So I was like, I'm just going to write about what everyone wants to do with the trumpet and play in the upper register. My idea was that it was just going to be like this simple little paper, but being trumpet players, we get geeked out, and I was like, oh man, this is a lot of work. As you said, like 100 some pages later, I thought it was just going to be this easy write. But one thing I thought was really fascinating, and the approach I liked that I did with it, was I approached not only lead players, but I also approached classical players, which I feel like gets overlooked quite a bit from a upper register standpoint. Those guys playing the natural trumpets and all that Baroque stuff. I mean, that is incredibly difficult music. And I love diving in and really exploring that part of the upper register playing and seeing these guys do that. I remember there was a guy who I interviewed. I'm going to mispronounce his name. He lives in Europe, and I showed my friend a video of him playing natural trumpet. I think it was the Brandenburg, and he was like, "That's a playback. There's no way he's playing that live." I was like, "Dude, I've looked at like hundreds of videos of this guy. He's 100% playing it live." Friedrich Emer, I think is his name. I love that, and I love just I just love what the guys who are all our heroes had to say. The Bobby Shue, Roger Ingram, Greg Gisbert, John Faddis. And the question that I found most interesting was, is upper register playing a learned ability or a natural ability? And it was the only question on the questionnaire that I sent these guys that everyone said it's 100% a learned ability, which I think gives a lot of people, I don't know if hope is the right word, but like, they're like, oh, yeah, I can do this. Because I do think that the mental is a much more prevalent factor when it comes to upper register playing than the physical. Once you figure the physical out, it's all mental, and it's just a matter of time of sitting down. A lot of jazz players ask me sometimes, well, what do I have to do? I said, well, how long have you practiced playing jazz? At my whole life. I said, well, take that whole life and put it towards playing the upper register. I said, you're a fantastic jazz player. There's no way that you wouldn't figure it out eventually.
Yeah.
And the 10,000 hour rule, all those things apply. And I thought that was pretty fascinating, I think those are my favorite parts about writing it. But just exploring trumpet, and then that kind of blew up, by accident.
Yeah. Well, that's really got, there are a couple fascinating points that you brought up, and I want to kind of dive into those a little bit deeper. The first one is, the idea that, there's a level of mastery, and like it takes time to develop it. And, there are so many great players that admittedly were not natural lead players. Bobby is one of those people. He's like, he got thrown into the lead book. Greg Gisbert, another, phenomenal lead player, but, was definitely not a lead player. Then you have other guys like, Wayne and Faddis and people like that it was a natural thing. But at some point there always seems to be, for the learned, obviously it's like they couldn't do it, but then they had to learn to do it. And for the naturals, it's like, I picked up the horn, and after a couple of years I could play a double high C, but then they had to actually learn how to control it, and then they had to learn to diagnose things. I know Wayne is one of those people who, eventually ran into some chop problems, and it's like, well, I never had to learn how to do it. So
Faddis had chop problems too, and I think everyone kind of goes through a chop problem, and you're going to have to relearn how to do it eventually, And I mean, Bobby, the same thing. Bobby said, I didn't really learn how to play trumpet until I hurt myself, because you don't ever think about it. Yeah. Which I find pretty fascinating too.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that if anybody out there is interested in learning more about the how to play in the upper register, the two things you could do is first is download Augie's dissertation, and then buy his book Build Your Range, which is one of my favorite books. I actually use that. I have to admit this is if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, please don't do this at home, because I don't always get a chance to practice at home. So I keep a mouthpiece in my car with a little buzzing device, and I have like the first 3 tracks from your book. Well, they were on my CD player, then they became on my phone, and now that you can stream this stuff on Spotify, that's even better. But I would just play those every day. I mean, that would just be my practice session, and it was just really cool. And I love the approach of having exercises that were so foundational, so just basic and concrete, but having to play them with tracks makes it musical as opposed to just playing Clark. So, and what kind of was the book a outgrowth of the dissertation? Like, are you distilling that information, or was it just something completely different? Or
it was definitely, I saw the positive response to the dissertation, and what I thought was like, man, wouldn't it be great if I just like came with like a specific like exercises just to practice. And I feel like a lot of times when people are working on their range, the biggest thing they do is just pound, pound, pound. So and I was like, but it needs a play along, because, if you don't play with the play along, that's fine. But the best thing to me about the play along, it has those built-in rests where you're not going to just, pound yourself into the ground and then not be able to play for 2 days and I'm kind of lazy in the fact that I want to kill as many birds with one stone. So like with the play along as well, you're working on your intonation, you're working on your time. You really can't skate over anything when you're practicing it that way, which I feel like when the dissertation, like there are exercises in there, which I included most of them in the book, probably so long ago, it's hard to remember, but it just, you want to be able to offer that to people, but also offer them the highest success you can, because if it's not good for them, it's not good for anybody, and no one's you're gonna see no success with it.
Yeah. Well, I just like I said, I loved working out of your book. I was I still use it, kind of alternate between yours and Walter White's long tone accompaniment tracks, because it makes sense to me, if you're going to be practicing, to practice with music, like you said, intonation and timing, and because that's what we're doing this for. We're doing this to make music. And I was thinking, man, I would just love it if somebody sat down and wrote accompanying tracks for Clark or for Arbin, so that all of the etudes and the technical studies, you're doing it with, a section.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it. It's just, I'm not sure the technology is there yet. I probably shouldn't say this, but if you can do it, anybody's welcome to steal this idea. But, I love the Clark characteristic, the Arbin's characteristic studies, and I would love to make a play along with them. The only problem is I want to make a play along where you can adjust the tempo. And I don't know I know that like the iRealB app, that's a great app, if you want to work on some changes and you can adjust tempos and keys. Mm-hmm. I just don't have access to that technology. So, I don't think it would behoove anybody just to be able to play it at one tempo.
Yeah. You need to be able to scale it back. And I know the technology is out there. I think that Gordon Goodwin had some play-alongs that they came with an app that allowed you to play with the tempo. So
I'm sure it's pretty easy. It's just only so many projects you can do, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you might have to get partnered up with someone on that one.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great idea. But I want to go back to your what you were saying about your original idea for your dissertation with the state of jazz studies. I mean, so if you could write that paper now, what would your take on that be?
It's it's tough. I go back and forth because obviously a lot of the connections I have are through the schooling I've done. And I do think that's a very positive part of school. And there is a competitive nature to school where you see people practicing and you want to practice too, and I think that's healthy and I think that's great. The part is just like school is just, and beyond music, school is, in my opinion, just too expensive right now.
Right.
And no matter what you do, whether you're going into education, whether you're going in, to be a doctor, I mean, it just, the inflation rate on school has just been like skyrocketing. My wife's in education. I ask her all the time, is this bubble going to burst like the housing market did or this did? And, I think it will eventually, and now with COVID and everything going online and everything like that, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Because you can't teach music online like you can, you can't do an online big band, or you can't do an online small group, or you can't do, even online one-on-one trumpet lessons isn't the same, so I just think that, and I do think that schools are starting to make curriculum changes. I know Miami is for sure. And I know that I was down and visiting North Texas, and I know that they've made some curriculum changes, and I think it's going in the right direction. I just think the biggest problem right now is the price of school.
Yeah.
It's just, in North Texas, relatively cheap because it's a public school, but like, the private schools, like the Juilliards, the Manhattan School of Music, I'm not sure if Indiana is public or private. I think it's public, but these schools are so expensive, and it's tough to make it as a musician. And if, let's say, you want to move to New York, you're going to have expensive rent, and then to have a big student loan payment on top of that, it's hard to set yourself up for success, without having another gig. And then if you have another gig, it takes away from the practice, and it's, it's tough, and if let's say, if you're getting a performance degree and you didn't have anything other than performance classes, whether you're going to be from 9 to 10 a.m., you're going to be transcribing theory kind of class. From, 10 to 11, you're going to be shedding piano. And from, and you did that kind of just all performance where you're not learning about, and sorry if you're a big Renaissance or medieval music history buff, if we're not learning any of that, because I personally hated that part of music school. I just, not that it's not important, but it's just, I didn't find a personal interest in that. So I wasn't motivated to do that. What kind of players would you be turning out? And, would those be the 1% that are really, making it solely as performers? Yeah. It's an interesting theory. I always say if I were going to redo my career, if I wanted to be just a soloist, I'd get 4 or 5 of my friends and get in a van and just drive around the country and play gigs and see what kind of traction you can get. And I tell young people to do that all the time, because you're 22. If it doesn't work out, well, you got plenty of time to go do something else and figure it out. But you're never going to have that time to be screw up and then have, it's not like you want to do that at 40 or, it's I would love to just like have an experiment where you have the one kid do like the straight arrow music school route and the other one do like the very experimental one, and see where it ends up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a kind of interesting concept because, we think about jazz and, like you're saying that you can go out and you can do a lot of club dates and, big band dates, and maybe you get $10. Of course, if you have a bar tab, it's probably, you're going to, we don't even get into that. But I think it's even worse for classical players, because if you think about, how many professional orchestras are there in the United States right now, and how many trumpet chairs? I mean, and God bless you if you're a tuba player. There's one tuba in the orchestra, and so how many students are trying to do a performance degree in tuba, and how many jobs are there? And when somebody gets a job, they're going to stay there until they're dead. And so it's like you're setting yourself up. If you're trying to do it to make a living, you're setting yourself up for disaster. I mean, it's just, there's no two ways about it. The system doesn't work that way. But I think that the concept that it's almost like the apprenticeship model, where you're out there and you're hustling and you're learning and if it was done in a way where it wasn't like just throw you out to the wolves, but where you were just doing more real work, but having some level of mentorship, a formal mentorship that the university could provide, and so maybe. But our education system, I could go on a whole rant on how the education system in general is just, it's an archaic model, and things have changed, and, it's societally things have changed, but we try to hold on to the same stigmas and things like that and same paradigms. So you need to change with the time. So, yeah,
I mean, I think like it shouldn't be a music performance degree. It should be called an entrepreneurship degree, because that's really what we are. Entrepreneurs and finding creative ways to make it, make the ends meet and make things work and stand out here and, draw attention to yourself in positive ways.
Yeah, I always thought that, musicians or, athletes, we go back to that discussion, that, the kids that are in school on a scholarship for football or basketball, instead of making them take, natural sciences or, things like that, they should be taught basic business stuff, finances, investing, some basic marketing skills, some understanding law in terms of like copyright law and things like that. Those are the things that are going to help you more than your specific skill that you need to learn. Those are the things that are going to be more beneficial to you than taking some anthropology course or something like that.
Yeah, I hear you. It's it's a great debate, of what's important and what, it ultimately comes down to the person. What do they value? But I just think that at the end of the day, school is just too expensive for what you're walking away with.
Yeah. Like you said, man, just to spend $60,000 a year for a career,
music performance degree. Oof.
Yeah.
That's tough to swallow. And I got 3 of them. I got 3 music performance degrees, That's how stupid I am. But, but we have fun along the way. So that's good.
Yeah, that's good. So let's get away from the trumpet for a second. Let's talk about your cooking.
All right.
How did you get started cooking? I mean, what got your juices going on that?
I grew up in a big family. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And my dad's side of the family is German, and my mom's side of the family is Sicilian. And my dad's side of the family were all butchers. My great-grandfather had a butcher shop, and my grandfather ran it. And then my father worked in it, eventually decided he didn't want to run that business. So, I mean, that was always in that side of the family. And my grandma, her father had a fruit vending cart in Milwaukee. And then Italians obviously is like sitting at dinner is a very important thing, especially Sunday night dinner. So I always grew up, pretty much every night of the week we'd sit down and eat dinner together, and it'd be something delicious every night, And when I was in high school, I just started asking my grandma and my dad, how do you make that? What are you putting in there? And like, why is this important? And and I just took a real interest in it, just because I just love food so much, as you can tell by the size I am. But yeah. And then when I got to New York, I love New York, and I think it has amazing restaurants, but I also think because there are so many people, there are also some not amazing restaurants. And, my wife and I would order in a few times. I'd be like, God, I just paid $30 for this. Like, let me just go down to the bodega and spend $10 in like fresh ingredients and make it way better.
Yeah.
So, it kind of came out of that. And then, I'm an idiot where I can't really do anything like just for fun. So I'm like, oh man, I have to go to culinary school now. But obviously I'm not going to stop what I'm doing and go to culinary school. So I just started researching and reading every instead of reading a novel, I just like cookbook after cookbook after cookbook and video after video, and like, just kind of like just really got into it. And to me, it was a nice break from music where, musicians are creative people and they're always going to want to be creative and do creative things. But it can't always be music because that's a terrible balance. And that was just kind of my way to be creative and, use those parts of my brain, but just through another avenue, another vehicle of food. And I just, I've just really loved it. And, that's kind of how it all came to be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I feel you on that because, I've gone through a few shifts in my life in terms of how I express myself. I mean, my careers, and, getting older, you're able to look back and see the patterns. And, I'm able to look back and go, oh, well, even though what I did when I was in my 20s and what I'm doing now as I'm pushing 60, they may look different on the outside, but on the inside, it's all following the same basic thing. It's my desire to be creative, my inquisitive nature, and so it becomes less important to me how I express those facets of myself than it is that I am expressing those facets of myself.
Yeah, I will say that my wife really pointed out to me one day. She goes, "Yeah, you were like the least well-rounded person I know." She's like, "Do you know this pop song?" I'm like, "I really don't." And, because I went to 9 years of jazz performance school, like, and I should have been better, but, you're studying for those tests and you're listening to jazz and you're trying to soak all that up while you're in there. And that's what your teachers are giving you.
Right.
And then I just realized, and she goes, "And when you hang out with your musician friends, all you do is talk about music and jazz." And I was like, "God, you're right." So at that point, I just said, I got to take a step back and like really assess, like, what am I doing? Because there is such a thing as too much of one thing, and it really, I think it helped me in my career. It helped me in my playing. It helped me in all aspects of my life to really just kind of open my eyes and say, I'm not in school anymore and I really better make some changes or else I probably won't last very long. I'll either get totally burnt out and not want to do this anymore, or just something else will happen. So it definitely helped kind of just even keel me out too. I like to be busy and I like to do creative things. And I learned that if it's not music all the time, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you had to think about it, I mean, other than the fact that, you have a level of creativity in the kitchen, what lessons have you learned from cooking that have, positively impacted your playing of the trumpet?
Sure. I will say the most important lesson I've learned in cooking is don't fry bacon without a shirt on.
Or pants. You make it. Yeah. No, let's just say no nude bacon. Nude bacon is bad.
No. When I was first really getting into cooking, I felt like you had to follow the recipe to every T, and like kind of like how you do in trumpet, like you take those exercises and you have to play at this metro mark and this, and I'm thinking, the more I did it, if I didn't have something, maybe I threw something else in there and just see where it landed, and I think it kind of just freed my mind, where when I got into especially improvising situations or just, if something wasn't going the way I thought it should on a gig, then I'm just going to grab another ingredient and make that work, because I think it just chilled me out a little bit, because, musicians can get really in their own head and stuck in their own world and think like, this is the way it needs to be every time.
Right.
And I think it just helped me realize, like, hey man, if you don't put a half a teaspoon of cumin in there, it's still probably going to taste pretty good, and try this other spice instead. And it just mellowed me out and just let me think like, yeah, it's going to be all good. Yeah. My sisters make fun of me all the time, because they're like, you're just the all good man. We'll say something to you and you just say, it's all good. You know, because I found that even if you burn it, it might taste pretty good, and it's never as bad as you think it is.
It's caramelized. It's not
Yeah,
burnt. It's
yeah,
caramelized.
exactly. Nothing's ever as bad as you think it is, you know.
Yeah.
And if you oversalted it, or if you played a wrong note, there's always tomorrow, and you know, and try again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So, is there a can you look at it from the other way? I mean, were there things about your approach to trumpet that influenced the way you cooked?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, like music and musicians, one thing that is so great is that you know you're learning this discipline, and you realize what it takes to be good at something, or just the discipline to say, I'm going to sit and do this, you know. And it really, on that end, it gave me the kind of the patience to be like, if I didn't do this dish perfectly the first time, that's okay, you know, because I know that there's a systematic way of doing things, and it will get better. You know, if you work on an exercise for a week, you know, I mean, I shouldn't say you will get better, but you know, 90% chance that you're probably going to get better at that exercise,
Yeah.
even if it's by a little. And I think it just let me think like, yeah, like you don't have to be a Michelin star cook right away. And not that I'm a Michelin star cook at all, but you know, you want to have those expectations for yourself.
Right.
And music kind of teaches you that discipline of how are you going to get there,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which I felt like helped me in the kitchen a lot.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Yeah. So, folks out there listening, you know, here you go. There's your lesson. Dr. Haas has spoken.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's do you find that a lot of your bandmates invite themselves over to your place for for events?
Absolutely. I always, you know, I always set in an empty when I was growing up, we always had a place setting for someone who might just pop in, you know,
Mhm.
and I always tell people I love the what I like to call the Seinfeld pop by. You know, if you know I'm generally going to be home, or shoot me a text, and if I'm home, come on up and let's hang. I'm all
Yeah.
about it.
So, what's your favorite meal to cook?
I really love making homemade pasta. I think there's something therapeutic about, you know, the well and the eggs, and then rolling the dough out, and like, you know, and then rolling that out to get, there's something really I love about it. And, you know, you look at the ingredients of pasta, sometimes it's like 8,000 ingredients, and then you make it at home and it's like flour and eggs, you know, and
Yeah.
there's something very satisfying about that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my very good friends is an expert bread baker. And so, yeah, he has made a very long study of making bread, and many travels to all over the United States and to Europe, and everywhere he goes, he tries to find something about the local breads, and
Yeah.
yeah,
There's a
and
lot of history. There's a lot of history in bread.
man, I love being the guinea pig for those. I mean, I'll taste that all day long. I was on a low carb diet for a long time. I was going keto, and now I'm off of it, and I just like give me the bread.
Give me all the carbs.
Yeah, carb load for sure. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, there's kind of a food is so interesting because for most cultures, food just plays such an integral role in the social dynamic, and I think especially with the Italian culture, you see that it's the big meals. My mother's Mexican, and the Spanish culture, it's a big thing. And my wife is from Romania, and so I'm learning all about their social customs in terms of food, because it's like we can't go anywhere with her Romanian friends and not have like way more food that you can eat and way more booze than you can drink. Which when I'm around,
I'll take the booze challenge any day.
Yeah, well, so, but it's so interesting because with food, there's that social context of it, and then the way smells affect our memories. So, I have this love for bread because I just remember around the holidays my mom making homemade rolls and that smell of yeast, as she's making it, and if I smell that, I just immediately am transport. Yeah, back there, and it's always a good feeling. It's never like you go, oh God, that smells like bread. It's just I have that with Kahlua. I had a really bad experience with Kahlua when I was
Well, yeah,
21,
it can
and so
also go the opposite
yeah,
direction. Like, oh,
but so I mean, like I can see how cooking does provide a level of benefit for you. Do you find like when you're in the kitchen when you're doing your thing that you kind of get zenned out and just like lose track of time and that.
absolutely. Yeah. Just pour a glass of wine or maybe a glass of whiskey and just, it's it's the balance. It's all the things that New York isn't. Or it's all the kitchen isn't what all of what New York is. So New York is like, I have to get here as quickly as possible, and I have to do this as quickly as possible. And there are a million people. It's me in the kitchen, and it's my glass of whiskey, and it's these fresh ingredients, and it's just like, I'm cool. There's no rush. I don't have to do this in any time. I'm on my own clock, and there's something great about that.
Yeah. Well, cool.
And I think
Cool.
we need to take that approach and apply that to other aspects of our life.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of my favorite sayings is how you do anything is how you do everything, and so that has a positive and a negative to it. I mean, if you can learn how to approach your life where you're consistent, where you stay congruent with yourself and your approaches and your attitudes, and then that's cool. Unless you're an asshole, and then you're an asshole all the time. but
But at least you're consistent.
Exactly. But yeah, it's like those lessons that you learn of just it's going to be, yeah, even if it doesn't work out the way you wanted it to, like you said, there's always the next time, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's all good, man. It's all good.
it's all good.
It's all
That's the motto I live by.
yeah.
It's all good.
So let's get back to the trumpet world for just a minute. I have to I have to appease the gearheads out there. What kind of gear setup are you using these days?
Um, I've played Benjes for forever. Since my uh, since pretty much I was in college. Late as of late, I went from a 3X LA 3X plus just to a straight 3X. I've lost about, I don't know, 90 pounds now, and I've decided that the plus just felt a little too big. And mouthpieces, I'm a Warburton guy, and just playing a straight 5S with a 5 backbore, like a very middle of the road kind of. Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing too extreme on any levels.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, I've had this conversation with a few different people about gear, and you have the small setup players, and you have the huge setup players, and I've always been like a big gear guy, and then I've started to bring it in a little bit more, and what's your take on that? I mean, I know personally you apparently do like the larger bore horns. How do you balance out, so that you're not falling into it? And what do you see as the pluses and minuses of small setups versus large setups?
I feel like small setups is just, you're limited into how much you can do on that setup. Small setups I think are kind of built for, certain type of playing where, you know, especially now it's, you're expected to do a lot more as one single player. I mean, i.e. like when I was with Harry, you have to play a little bit of jazz and you have to play a little bit of this. So, and a little bit of lead. And, I think a small setup is great. But you're going to, in my opinion, you're going to sacrifice sound a little bit to be able to do all the things that you want to do on that setup. And then you're going to have to manipulate a little bit probably in the to mid to lower registers. And maybe you're only playing that small setup for a specific thing. And in that case, I think it works great. You know, always in the mindset, the right tool for the right job. I just like to be able to do any. I could never switch. I've never been a guy who could able to switch mouthpieces, especially you like the loose soloffs. You
Yeah.
get like 30 mouthpieces on the bandstand at once. I think for me it's just more of a mental thing. I just like when I think of a switch, I'm thinking, oh gosh, where am I? So in terms of just falling in, I don't know. I think just more about the air, and I always want to feel like I'm pushing out more than pressing in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I've never been a huge gear guy, and I've become one more now that I've lost weight, and I kind of went through a phase of just trying to find something comfortable on my face again. And I basically did a very long circle to end up very similar to where I was. I think if I would have just been patient, I could have, saved myself a lot of time and a lot of money. But it's just the right tool for the right job. I wouldn't feel comfortable playing a small setup in an orchestra, and I wouldn't feel comfortable playing a large setup, leading a big band. So but ideally it's what you feel most comfortable. And I think it boils down most to how the rim feels on your face, and then adjusting from there and finding the balance.
Yeah. Well, those are good words of advice. That's one of the things where, anytime you're listening to someone, especially a younger player or a less experienced player, asking a seasoned pro about gear, it's like, well, what's the best horn to play, and, they don't always take in consideration, asking the more pertinent question, or at least prefacing it with, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm trying to accomplish, and these are the problems I'm having. So with all of that in mind, what would you suggest that I do, and that's coming from my analytical mind.
No,
but
it's a good, you have to be analytical in all of this, and that's why we do the blind test, with our friends. Like, how many times have you said, okay, what sound do you like better? I'm not going to tell you which one is. Or when you're working with a mouthpiece guy, he just hands you something and says, don't look at it, just play it. Because our mind can play a lot of tricks on us.
Oh yeah.
A lot of tricks on us.
Yeah. So that's kind of a cool approach, though, of this really focusing in on the, what is it, what are the demands that you have, and finding that right tool for the job. Because you do a lot of different work. You have your combo, like you're a small group, you do big band stuff, you do pit work. So you have to be able to hit all of those, and it's a question of, do you want to carry a U-Haul truck filled with horns and mouthpieces, or do you want to roll in with one bag?
Yeah, exactly. And what people don't really think about is, like, everyone has this quest for the double high C or those type of notes, and the demand for those notes is so far and few between compared to everything else you're going to have to play. There's not going to be 30 double high C's or double A's or whatever notes, but I bet you there'll be about 50 high C's in a big band gig. So, like, what are you going to feel most comfortable about? Like, manipulating yourself so you can play that one double high C, or are you going to pick something that you feel really great and balanced on to play everything else really amazing, and then work a little harder maybe for that high? It's, like I said, it's a balance thing.
Yeah, it's priorities, Yeah. So in New York, there are so many great players. You're up there, Tony Cadlick, Scott Engelbright, Frank Green. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. How do you feel like we are working in an environment where there just there's so many just tremendously talented guys?
I think it's it's kind of like that musical thing. You feel motivated, and when you see Tony Cadlick on a gig, you want to sound like $1 million, because he's going to sound like $1 million, and it keeps you motivated, and all the guys you listed couldn't be nicer guys as well. I mean, there's a real community here, and and that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
It's I read an article once by Bernie Glow, and he was saying that the trumpet is so hard that trumpet players can really only be friends with other trumpet players because they're the only ones who know what you're going through. Like a saxophone player can be friends with a drummer, and vice versa.
Yeah. Nobody can be friends with drummers. That's
but I was thinking about it, I was like, it's kind of true. Like,
yeah,
God, it's just such a it can be such a mind game sometimes, and it's a good feeling to know that there are other people in your community who can bring you to those next levels.
Yeah. There's nothing that you're going through as a player that they haven't experienced as well.
Yeah.
So,
I'd have no problem calling Tony or Scott Engelbright or anybody saying, "Hey man, I'm kind of struggling with this right now. What do you think?" And obviously through technology and Zoom and all the things, I mean, it's a lot more accessible, but to have those people right in your backyard is a good feeling.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I mean, I know that your book is a wealth of information. Do you teach private lessons as well, or is just
for sure. I love teaching because I feel like I'm always learning, and I love to learn. I think most musicians are like that. We have a lot of interest and a lot of just desire to what's that? I want to check that out. With the creative brains and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I love teaching.
Yeah. How would you classify yourself as a teacher? What's kind of like your approach?
Can you be more specific?
No, I cannot.
Okay. I guess I'm just I'm pretty laid back.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't do the work, don't waste my time kind of person. I'm happy to give you as much time as you need.
Mm-hmm.
But don't waste it. That's kind of my approach. And I love working out problems and, figuring out, if you're having that issue, because it's just more knowledge in my back pocket, to either help someone else or help myself.
Yeah.
And, I'm pretty laid back as long as you show up and do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. All right. Well, we're going to, switch gears for this final segment. This is our speed studies round.
All right.
And it's going to be a rapid fire round. So questions are going to be all over the place. So be prepared. Give me your best answer. All right. Who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
My parents.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
Can it be music?
Hey, anything.
My favorite book, Chet Baker's autobiography.
Yeah. What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
Drive.
If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
Rich.
Those two are mutually exclusive.
I'll say chef.
All right. What's your favorite drink?
It's hard to pick one, so I'm gonna give you three: a dirty gin martini, whiskey neat, or a white Russian.
What kind of whiskey do you like?
Mostly bourbon.
Give me
Willet bourbon.
Willet. I got this much left in a bottle of Willet, and I'm just holding on to it.
Willet's one of my best. Barrel bourbon's great. Michter's, Makers. I like Makers. Rowan's Creek. I've had Pappy. Pappy's great.
Yeah. We're definitely going to have to get together and have some steak and bourbon together.
There you go.
All right. You can have a dinner party. See, speaking of which, you can have a dinner party. You don't have to cook for this one either. And you can have any three living people. Who would they be?
Any three living people. Michael Jordan. Barack Obama. And Will Ferrell.
Okay. Will he sing Ya Ya Ding Dong? That's the question.
I don't know.
Have you seen the Eurovision?
I have.
Yes, yes. That's a sad movie. Same thing. You have a dinner party, and this time your guest list are any three people from history. Who would they be?
Louis Armstrong. I'm assuming these people are no longer living, right?
Yes, that would be correct.
Louis Armstrong, Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill.
Okay. Lacquer, plated, or raw?
Probably lacquer.
Okay. What's your favorite quote?
Never pass up the opportunity to say nothing at all.
What is your greatest fear?
Greatest fear? Heights, falling off a cliff.
You could only have one superpower. What would it be?
The ability to eat anything I want without any repercussions of like gaining weight or whatever.
That would be amazing. What aspect of trumpet playing do you think is the most overrated?
Upper register playing.
Says the man with the book, Build Your Age.
Hey man, you have to be able to know before you can. I always say school's a waste of time, and I know because I did it all.
Okay, what do you think is the most underrated aspect of trumpet playing?
Time.
Okay. You have the ability to go back in time and give yourself, your younger self, one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
Start earlier on your own creative endeavors.
Yeah. Same thing. You're back there in time, and you're going to give yourself advice, but this time it's just about life in general. What would it be?
It would be about investing and saving money. How to save better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you want your legacy to be?
Nice person. A good person.
Well, we could use a lot more of those.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that of all the things that we could aspire to, that's probably the best one, and especially as a musician, I'm a firm believer that music is it's a method of communication. So it's trying to take what's inside you, inside your heart, inside your mind, and share it with other people. And music that comes from a place of love and of positive space.
Absolutely.
That's always the most. Angry music touches you too, but but there's just something about listening to something that soothes your soul. So
yeah, I always say it's a lot easier to be nice. Takes a lot more effort to be an asshole.
Yeah, that's probably a good. Not for some people though. But, maybe for you, Augie, because you're just a good guy.
I promise. It applies to everybody.
Yeah, I know. All right. Well, yeah, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate you asking me.
Oh man, this has been great. And if anybody needs to find out more about you, where should they go?
My website is cool, augiehaas.com, or I'm the same on the Instagram, just Augie Haas. Those two are good. Those are two good places.
Okay. And you have anything, I know gigs are kind of slim pickings right now, but anything on the horizon for you?
I do have some things on the rise. I have a new single coming out next month, which I'm excited for. A totally different direction. Something coming out that is not like anything I've done, which I'm very excited about. I wrote... Klezmer? Yeah, exactly. No, I wrote and illustrated the kids' book during this whole thing.
Cool.
So I'm excited for that to come out, and a few other little projects that be on the lookout for. So yeah, I've been definitely making the most of my time in quarantine.
Okay, cool. So you're going to be posting about that on your Instagram and on your Okay. So make sure you're following Augie so you can check out his new endeavors. So again, thanks, Augie. Really appreciate it, man. Wish you nothing but the best. And thank you for joining us today. And as always, peace and slide grease. We're out. Hey, thank you so much for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating connection through our mutual love for the trumpet life. I hope that you learned a few things about today's guest and had some laughs along the way. Don't forget to give us a review. We love those 5-star ratings. And please share this podcast with your friends. We want to see our hang grow for show. Have a suggestion for a future topic or a guest? Hit me up at thetrumpetgurus@gmail.com. Our opening theme was written and performed by Lexi Signor, and all other music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. So in the words of W.C. Handy, life is like a trumpet. If you don't put anything into it, you don't get anything out. So go out there and let your trumpet sound. And I'll see you at the next hang.